How's it going, everyone? It's Abdallah here, and I'm joined with none other than Robbett from the Springdale Data Sciences, and we're talking about the Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble shutdown that's happening. So, Robbett, what's happening, my man?
Hey Abdallah, hey Wibwobbers. Not much. We're just a few days away from the shutdown here, so it's good to talk about the game and its legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to show you guys exactly what went on. We're going to talk about the history of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble. We're going to talk about the definitely what things happened throughout the entire legacy of it. Things that may have attributed to the downfall and the shutdown of the game. And of course, we're going to be providing our feedback of what we felt could have been done differently. And of course, we're going to talk about the future of Yokai Watch and mobile games by the end of this. So make sure you guys stick around to the very end. And of course, if you guys agree with anything that we're saying, or if you guys disagree, or if you guys just want to tell us about what you think about the entire Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble shutdown, by all means, let us know in the comment section below. Robbett and I will be looking at them and responding accordingly. So without further ado, Robbett, why don't you tell the viewers about your channel and tell us about what you do for YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started playing Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble just after it started, and so that's 2 years now. And I started playing its Japanese version, Puni Puni, a little over a year ago. And so I really just wanted to be a big part of helping the community through the events, especially in the Japanese version, where it's a little bit more difficult with the language barrier. But just talking about how the game works, trying to bring some transparency to things like the gacha and crank rates, and let people enjoy it for the game that it is.
Absolutely, man. I've watched plenty of your videos, very helpful. So if you guys haven't already subscribed, make sure you guys do so. All right, so let's talk about Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, right? The history of the game. This game came out in Japan first in October of 2015. We got the game, we, as in the United States, we got the game March 24th, 2016, of course, with later releases, such as Europe and Russia got it a little bit later on as well. And then we also had Taiwan and Korean releases. So, Robbett, tell me about the staggered launch. How do you think that attributed and helped out Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, if it did?
Yeah, I think, in the mainline games on the 3DS, you have a staggering as well. And so certainly we could attribute it to localization and other things. I think probably the success in the Japanese market made Level 5 and NHN, the developer of the mobile game, think, hey, we should do this elsewhere. There are a lot of markets in the world that Level 5 cares about as a media franchise, the US definitely being one of them. And so I think they decided to try it out all over the place. And it's kind of an interesting choice that they did at different times for different markets, and in fact that they released effectively different versions of the game. They were all based on Wibble Wobble, but slightly different events, all kinds of things depending on which market you were in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember, like, as a day one player, it was a great timing for the United States because it was in 2015, right when Yokai Watch was coming outside of Japan, and we were getting all hyped up about it. Boom, we get this very cool app game, and it was just a pleasure to figure it out at the beginning. So, in case you guys didn't know, Level 5 was in charge of planning and development. It's a Level 5 franchise. And then NHN PlayArt was in charge of development and operations. And Robbett, we were talking earlier, but NHN, not only do they do Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, but they also do some other games, right? Like Disney Tsum Tsum. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. They have, a couple of games out there, but I like to talk about Tsum Tsum because it was a precursor to Wibble Wobble. You can even tell in the name, right? Tsum Tsum, Wibble Wobble, Puni Puni.
Right.
And really, Tsum Tsum has been a huge breakout hit for NHN, the developer, for Disney, the content provider, and for Line, a Japanese social network. And I think that Level 5 and NHN felt they could do the same thing for the Yokai Watch franchise. And so Tsum Tsum's not quite as deep. It doesn't have the awesome yokai, obviously, but there are a lot of game mechanics that are similar, and I think that's what they brought over to Puni Puni and Wibble Wobble, and then they just introduced a lot of additional elements based on Yokai Watch, and I think they did a great job bringing over a lot of the feel of the mainline games.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun game, I would say. When Wibble Wobble was around, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I was on that Yokai Watch hype train, and it was just so fun to figure out all the little intricacies and beating all the bosses and collecting all the stars and collecting all the yokai from the medallion. It's a really fun game. But yeah, overall, total downloads in Japan, I would definitely say that over 10 million downloads. That's amazing. And in the US, what do we have? Like speculating around 1 million-ish plus?
Yeah,
what are we thinking?
I think on across platforms in Japan, they hit 10 million probably middle of last year. Yeah, a year ago. Last May, we had an event around that.
Right.
And Wibwob, I think, probably just over 1 million would be my guess. Active players, which is really what the developer is going to care about, and to a certain extent level 5 as well. I'm sure much less on both, but it's really, I think the sheer staggering difference between the numbers is certainly one of the contributors we can talk about in terms of why Wibble Wobble didn't succeed, and yet Puni Puni continues to go on in Japan.
Absolutely. All right, so now that we're done kind of talking about the history of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, where it was at, and of course downloads and everything like that, let's talk about what makes an app game, successful or not. A lot of people seem to think, oh yeah, it's a fun game. I get to download it for free and I get to play it all day, and that's why are you shutting it down on me? I just want to play it all day. But you know what? At the end of the day, what happens is that app games need to make money somehow, and Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble didn't effectively make enough money to sustain its life, at least here in the United States. So being free to play, by the way, versus paying to play, there's a lot of different aspects that we're going to be covering right now. So Robbett, it's like there's a lot of things happening. A lot of people pride themselves on not spending a single dollar on the game, and then a lot of people are upset about that because they're paying a lot of money to help sustain the game. And there's a lot of server costs. You got to play you got to pay the wages for all the employees that are developing, translating, transcribing, coming up with names for yokai, making sure all the bugs and glitches are taken care of, benefits, marketing. There's a lot of money that goes into these app games. So tell me your thoughts on free to play versus pay to play. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Level 5 has it sort of both ways. They have the mainline games you're paying up front, and that's how they're making their money. And so they have these sort of big shots that they get to take at the market, where they hope hundreds of thousands of people will buy that 3DS or Switch game.
Right.
And the mobile market, like you said, it's very different. Not only do they have this freemium model that we'll talk about a little bit, but it's an ongoing thing. And so you have to keep the service running. You have to keep innovating in the game. You have to keep bringing new content. And all that time, that money is being shared with content creator like Level 5. And so you have two different perspectives on a game like this. You have Level 5s who might be very interested in bringing it to a market and making some money. And then you have NHN that probably has the majority of the burden. They don't have that content intellectual property that they create, but they're the ones running it, maintaining it, coding it, and they're trying to wring as much money out of the game as they can because it's their business. And so it can be challenging. I'm sure many games are far less successful even than Wibble Wobble. But that is the difference between Puni Puni and Wibble Wobble, is they just weren't able to make the money they needed to make it profitable and continue to invest in it.
Absolutely. It's not profitable, and we're going to go into reasons why the game wasn't as profitable as Level 5 and NHN wanted. So let's talk about the economy of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble. So the economy for Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, there's a couple different currencies and whatnot. You can use Y money, right? That's the main currency that you're going to be using. So Robbett, why don't you tell us a little bit about earning Y money? What's it used for? How does one quickly earn it? How can you farm it? And of course, like how do you go about purchasing Y money? Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, so for those of you who have played it or those that are familiar with other free-to-play mobile games, you basically have a main currency, maybe more than one, and it's a way of abstracting away the actual money you play. So, without going too much into the psychology of free-to-play games, it's a way of expressing the in-game money without necessarily flaunting to the actual value of that if you were to pay real dollars for it. And that allows people that don't pay money, but earn it through missions or bonuses or what have you, versus those that do pay real money. And it also perhaps makes it a little bit easier for the people that pay real money to not think so much about how much they've paid. But as you mentioned, Y money was definitely the main currency of Wibble Wobble. In Puni, it's sort of been taken over by a Y points notion that we can talk about a little bit. But if you wanted to buy Spirit, if you wanted to do cranks in the Crankakai, Y money was the way you did it, and you could grind it or you could pay real money to get it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you would pretty much earn Y money by battling yokai in levels. If you had some really, really good yokai on your team, you can use those yokai to multiply effectively how much Y money you get, getting higher scores, equating to more Y money. So if you essentially put in the time and grinding, you can have millions upon millions of Y money. And that definitely will help you. It'll make the game a lot more fun because you can crank more and you can do a lot more with it. But it doesn't necessarily help out the app because you're not purchasing something like that. So you can actually purchase Y money. Like if you don't want to do the grinding and you just want like, hey, here's X amount of Y money, you can purchase that with real money, like you were kind of talking about earlier. Or you can pretty much grind it or farm it, however. Now, with purchasing Y money, there was a certain reward list or a tier list, i.e., Silver 1, Silver 2, Silver 3, Black 1, Black 2, Black 3, etc. Now, this list in Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, it was an interesting tier list. If you spent maybe a couple bucks, you got like the first couple rewards of some soul secrets and maybe a yokai here and there. But there were a lot of other yokai in the higher tiers. So, Robbit, why don't you tell the viewers, what kind of yokai rewards are way up there, and like how much did that all cost people?
Yeah, so in any of these games, especially when you have a mechanic where you can play for free, and I think honestly, Puni Puni, Wibble Wobble are very generous versions of the free-to-play game, and why a lot of people love them. Obviously, they like Yokai Watch content, but it was pretty easy to get into Wibble Wobble simply because if you gave it the effort, it gave you something back, where a lot of games really just say, hey, you can play a little bit, but if you really want to advance, you're going to have to pay real money. And so that's definitely probably one of the things that contributed in the end, is there was a breakdown of that in-game economy. But in terms of the perks that you're talking about, these are really something tied to level 5. And when you spend a certain amount of money, you might get an exclusive yokai. These were generally the Geminions, so Rubinyon, Safinyon, etc. And it was a way, I think, of trying to curry some loyalty with level 5 itself. So the level 5 rewards were promised to be transferable across games. And that's another area, I think, where they were learning. They stumbled a little bit in the US, and in Japan, for example, Kunatori Wars, which is also a Yokai Watch game, but based on Romance of the Three Kingdoms. If you share the same ideas you do with Puni Puni, those perks carry across both games. So it wasn't necessarily a direct reward for buying something in Wibble Wobble. It was more of a reward for your patronage as a level 5 customer. And since they didn't have a bunch of games in the US other than Layton, and since those two use different ID systems, it didn't necessarily reward you that much. It became more of an incentive for, we'll call them whales, people that spend a lot of money on the game, to get those exclusive yokai. And so you were asking about the tiers, Panda Noko, which is a Y money booster, the best one in the game. It took roughly somewhere in the high 800s, low $900 to get the Panda Noko perk. And even then, since you couldn't get another one, you had to, grind and farm soul secrets to get his level up. And I think the farthest reward that I haven't seen because I'm not sure anybody in the US got, was at around $4,500. So now that isn't a one-time thing. That's you spend more money, etc., and you eventually end up there. But it was a way of rewarding level 5 players across games, hoping you'd spend money on multiple properties. And in the US, it just wasn't quite there.
Yeah, and not to mention each of the tiers, they weren't transparent as far as, hey, if you spend $100, you get this, or you spend $200, you get this. It wasn't transparent at all, so there were times where I would put money into the game and I would expect to jump to the next tier, but I got nothing in return, and I felt burnt from that. I said, you mean to tell me I just dropped $90 and you didn't bump me up a tier? What's going on? Where's the transparency on that? So that was a little interesting, but at the same time, then the question raises, why would I pay real money, hard-earned money from myself, my parents, whoever gave me this gift card, when I could farm Y money? There's really no reason to it. So moving on. We can also talk about, potential earnings. I know that there's a lot of apps on the App Store and Google Play that are in, that top 10 range where they're making millions upon millions every month. Wibble Wobble is barely making in like the top 500 as far as the US releases go. So, I mean, it's definitely not going so hot as far as earnings. But yeah, like definitely. In Japan, like you were talking about, like the Japanese market, they're constantly giving that content, like you talked about earlier, newer characters. People have got to get them, so that's sustaining, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So anyway, one of the things, and I talked about like me personally getting burnt from the game. There's many reasons why people didn't play Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble anymore. And of course, a lot of people get burnt out of playing the same game. Newer games come over here. Maybe you're just not interested anymore. You just lose interest. But one of the more reasons I would feel would be the lack of new content on a timely basis. And that, since there's a drought in content, people don't really want to sit there and just grind Y money. They want more levels, more different yokai. So a lot of people switched over to Puni Puni. And tell me about your experience with that, Robbett. Did you ever feel that there was like a lack of content with Wibble Wobble and you're just playing in Puni because there's so much to do?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was a little lucky. I added it as a second game over a year ago, and so I got kind of the ramp while I was able to play both of them. But Wibble Wobble definitely suffered from a lack of content. And I think that, there are a bunch of people I talk to on a daily basis that would feel, burnt is the term you used, about things like we'd have an event and all that event really added up to was there was a 5-star coin, except this time it was called something else, like a St. Patrick's Day coin. But, there wasn't anything unique in there. And so I love this game. I would stay up and wake up after maintenance, which was, 2, 3 in the morning, depending on when it was, only to find out that the event had no real new content and just a reskinned coin. And it's definitely one of the biggest failings of the game. And I can't blame NHN completely for this one. I think there are a bunch of contributing reasons, and one of them being the fact that in Japan, NHN, with the help of Level 5, is able to keep pace with the content being created in other mediums. So whether that's the anime, whether that's movies, there have been many Yokai Watch movies in Japan. We've only gotten one here. Whether that's the mainline 3DS games, since we haven't gotten Yokai Watch 3. It was hard, and I think NHN would have liked to have kept creating new content. there was a little bit of a lack of it there. I think they could have been more creative and created new content like Liberty Neon, who we got 2 July 4ths ago, and then the fantastic Liberty Neon SS last July 4th, which was our first Tracer, a certain type of Soultimate in the game. And that kind of stuff fans really responded to, but that takes much more outlay from NHN and to a certain degree Level 5 to clear and create that new IP. And I think there was almost a catch-22 where they weren't willing to invest too much because they weren't getting too much out of the game, and they weren't able to pull too much from Japan because too much of it was out of sequence of when we might get it in the US. And the end result was that we basically had the same game day after day with relatively new content until recently when it really started sharply rising. But I think at that point it may have been a little bit too little too late as it didn't see a good influx of players and therefore wasn't able to really save the game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like you were talking about the whole sequencing thing. A lot of people are thinking, hey, you know what? Usapion's not in the game at the time. They had to remove him out of the intro and whatnot. So, like, until certain sequences, like, fell into play, they couldn't release all the content, which was pretty crazy. So, anyway, one of the other reasons why people didn't play anymore, I mean, personally, myself, it was the gacha mechanics and the gacha odds, or the befriending chances were too low. I remember where we used to hold Cranky Kai parties, and I would save up 100,000 Y money, and we would all spend it in hopes of getting the new and exciting Yokai. I still remember it was like the Yokai first movie event with Dark Nyan. That was when he was making his debut. And we had this Cranky Kai party, and I couldn't crank him. I was like, come on, man. And I know you, specifically, you've done a lot of research for the community as far as the actual gacha odds before they were published. Like, I don't know if you guys have played since the beginning, but the entire gacha odds of like the 1%, like half of a percent, that wasn't published at all. We were not in the know about any of that stuff. And we were just hoping and praying that we'd get these yokai. And then we didn't get them, and we felt a little betrayed. We felt burnt out, and I don't know. So tell me about the gacha odds and befriending chances. Like, do you feel that like they were fair? Do you feel that they could have improved them? I don't know, man. But if something's gonna crank for like less than a fraction of a percent, come on now.
Yeah, I think, there are a couple sides to this story here. I think one of the difficulties is that the Wibble Wobble in-game economy is fairly simple, right? You only have Y money. You don't have a secondary premium currency. And the result is either you buy it or you grind it. And if you're going to be able to grind it, they're going to want to make it hard on you, whether that's befriending or whether that's cranking in the gacha. And, I think there are plenty of games out there with far lower rates. They may be more upfront about that. But I think that the true sensibility of Yokai Watch is befriending these yokai. It even, has that term. And the fans want to get them. And if you can translate that into a fair means of doing it, even if that is real money, but where people feel they're getting what they deserve out of it, that's when that game's going to be successful. And I think there was enough sort of weird randomness. Some of the stuff you talked about, the research I had done, the rates turned out to be roughly what they were published. But there's some weird things about how befriending works, some bugs that I exposed. And the result of that is people don't feel in control of the game. They kind of feel like maybe it'll do me a solid, maybe it won't. Maybe I'll play 100 battles and never get a befriending. Maybe I'll get one on the first try. And I think there needs to be some randomness. It may be low odds, but you do want some consistency so that you trust the game. You feel good about the effort you've put in or the money you've put in or whatever it is, and that it translates to real results for you. and even if it doesn't, that there's some good way to keep playing. And I think that's another thing. When you only have 1 or 2 new yokai every once in a while, you really want those 1 or 2 new ones. I remember when Wismellow Man was brought out for the Halloween event, and I spent 900,000 Y money, which at the time for me was a ton based on how much I could grind. And I didn't get him. And it was just random luck. It wasn't anything malicious on the part of the developers, but man, that sucked. And I think when there's only that one new yokai or maybe a few, it's hard to expend all that effort or real money and not get them.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It is definitely rough. But like you said, it's all about the economy. It's about the economy that was built for it. So one of the other reasons, personally, why I stopped playing was, you bought Y money to help level 5, to help Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, to shortcut grinding all the levels and whatnot. Grinding on Madaman at the time was the cool thing. So buying Y money and not getting anything when you're in between the tiers. And that's like the higher tiers, right? So I think I made videos of, okay, spending $80 on Wibble Wobble, spending $160 on Wibble Wobble, spending $240 on Wibble Wobble, and then I would show the rewards that you would get. And then there was one time where I think I spent another $80 and I didn't get anything. So I didn't upload the video because I was just really upset. And I'm just like, really? You mean to tell me that I'm not going to get something for buying that? So that was kind of a miss, and I'm like, all right, dude, come on, you got to fix this. And then one of the other things that kind of went over some people's heads at the very beginning of the game was that the Soultimate levels for Yokai were extended. They were extended. I don't know. Their reasoning was because I think that they wanted people to enjoy the game longer, and they wanted people to continuously get the same yokai after another in order to max them out. They extended them like 2 or 3 levels. Do you remember that, Robbett?
Yeah, they extended the max ultimate or level at the time was 6. It went to 7, but it's a non-linear scale. So it actually meant that you had to befriend them another 12 times or use 12 soul secrets. So it was quite a jump, and I think one of the reasons I love Wibble Wobble is because that core Crank-Kai, you can max it out. And so if you're willing to put in the time, the money, you can feel like you're really getting somewhere. Now, granted, it's a huge amount of time or money. But so that jump of all of a sudden, hey, every yokai, you now need to get 12 more times that Crank-Kai, it was a huge deal. It's in the past now, and I think, people just realize the system for what it is, but it really shows, I think, a lack of maturity in terms of how they thought about the in-game economy. And the phrase you used, longevity, I think, yes, it's longevity of play, but realistically it was longevity of the economy. And in Wibble Wobble, they never really solved that again. They with the Liberty Neon SS event last July, they introduced a second gacha in Japan. They've had 3 for a while now, and one of the reasons that it was hard to do that is because one of the gachas is effectively event content. So you have to keep that fresh. That's not something they were able to do in the US. But the difference there is the event gacha, you cannot max it out. You get soul secrets back if you've maxed yokai, but they really want you to keep putting into that and trying to get what you want, and the rates don't increase if you max it out. And so I almost think of it, when people ask me if they're picking up Puni Puni today, how to think about the gachas, the Crank-Kai is really just sort of the junior gacha at this point. It's the advanced set of yokai you get other than the starter pack. But realistically, if you're there to collect every yokai, if you're there to get all the new content, the event gacha is where it's at, and that translates a lot better for their in-game economy.
Absolutely. So those are some of the reasons why we thought of that people stopped playing the game. Some of them, hit hard to home. So I put them on our list. So let us know in the comments, of course, if you stopped playing. Was it just due to the shutdown? Was it due to something else? Please let us know. Again, let's make this video as interactive as possible so that if by chance Level 5 were to take a look at this video, they could read all of our comments and feedback. So Anyway, so now that we've kind of pointed out some flaws of the app game in and of itself, now it only makes sense to put it on the opposite. You know, what could have been done differently? And we've got a whole bunch of points here that we're going to go over. We're going to try to rapid fire go through them so that we can kind of give you guys an idea of if we were behind the reins of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, what will we do to ensure its success? Of course, yes, hindsight is always 20/20, but at the same time, if this game were to come back into the future, maybe some changes could be made. All right, so starting off, I would say having Y money be some sort of premium currency. Something premium that's not necessarily grindable, because as we've talked about in this discussion and you guys have learned, you know, grindable currency does not make an app game necessarily make so much money to sustain. So, Robbett, why don't you touch base a little bit on power creep and, you know, just why money as a premium currency? Tell us about that.
Yeah, the difficulty, I think, you know, I said previously, I really love that you can grind Wibble Wobble or Puni. You don't have to resort to money, but money makes it easier. And I think one of the things, they sort of price themselves out of their own game with power creep in that today in Wibble Wobble with Kirakoma and, you know, super attack boosters and all these great yokai that everyone desperately wanted and now are very easy to get with the game shutting down, you can basically make a crank in a single run, maybe 2 runs, and that's just not sustainable for them whatsoever. So I think in Puni, there's an interesting concept. They've gone with Y points. It's just sort of a riff on the same Y money concept, but it's much harder to grind those. They're only grindable via the events, and the events in turn are harder if you don't have the special event yokai, which are in the gacha that takes Y points. And so you can see that there's a lot of incentive to actually use money either to kickstart your ability to get Y points and those exclusive event yokai, or the grinding is a lot more difficult. And so something like that, or like you said, just a premium currency that isn't grindable to begin with, certainly that's the way that a lot of free-to-play games have gone. And it doesn't allow you to maybe play as much as Wibble Wobble did, as much freedom without money, but it's certainly something that could have kept the economy more solvent if players were willing to buy into it.
Yeah, agreed on that entirely. Now, when it comes to app games, there's an app game called Fire Emblem Heroes, if you guys have ever played it, you know, co-developed by Intelligent Systems and Nintendo, making over $10 million every month. It's just so awesome. So I'm taking a lot of concepts that Fire Emblem Heroes does, and I would like to incorporate them into Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble. So case in point, another one would be maybe changing the value of Spirit. If you guys don't play Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, Spirit is pretty much it's like the stamina, how much you can actually play the app game before having to pay out for it. Now, of course, at the beginning of the game, the beginning of the life cycle of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, you can get Spirit, or once you're done playing a little bit, you'll run out of Spirit, then you'll either have to ask your friends on the friends list, in-game friends list, for some Spirit, or you can go into the store and purchase Spirit so that you can play more. I really wish that there was some sort of maybe changing the value of it, removing it, maybe lowering the gifting Spirit option, so that people would maybe actually spend money on Spirit, because I don't think anyone in the United States spent a single penny on buying Spirit. So that's just saying, like, hey, you know what? You can easily change it up so that maybe people would spend some more money on it. So it's interesting.
I think the balance was never quite right there with Spirit. Certainly as you start out the game, all you've really got is, you know, your few, I think it's 5 was the limit Spirit, that would automatically regenerate with time. Then you can start to bring friends into it, but without any kind of social network connection, without a large player base, you really had to go to the subreddit to, you know, you can see it today on my YouTube videos. The comments are just littered with friend codes. There wasn't a great way to do it, and you didn't have sort of that support mechanism where people could go to game boards online and just have friends lists, etc. And so You can get up to 30 friends in Wibble Wobble, and you can get a pretty good spirit roll going there if you're willing to keep contributing to each other. But like you said, you can also just buy it with Y money. And I think the thought there was, hey, if I'm out of spirit, I'll pay real money, I'll get Y money, and then I'll get spirit. But I don't know how much that really translated. And certainly as the power creeped up, spirit was effectively free. Because the cost was the in-game cost was too low. And actually just a little under a year ago, they started capping how much spirit you could buy with Y money, I think to combat this problem. But the end result of that was also that if you didn't have a lot of spirit and wanted to buy it with real money, you could only do so much a day. So they ended up handicapping themselves at the same time.
Yeah, agreed. So one of the other things that I feel that we could change or do differently in Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble was the mechanics of getting duplicate yokai. As of right now, once you get a yokai, you just have that one of them. And if you crank another one or if you befriend another one, you simply power up that same yokai the exact same time. So if they change that up and maybe implemented some sort of individual natures or individual values on a specific yokai, I think that would be a little bit interesting, and you would be able to choose from your 10 Jibanyan that you cranked which one you would like to max out with your soul secrets, or if you got a suboptimal one with individual values, maybe you could pay more of your Y money to try to get a different one. Maybe something like that could have been happening. Maybe if you had non-duplicate merging into yokai, people wouldn't max out the crankikai. It'd be a little bit different. But I think that overall structure of the crankikai and getting yokai out of there, I think that needs a complete overhaul, because like you said earlier in our interview, it's really, once you put the time and work into it and you crank every single yokai and you max them all out, you're going to get the yokai that you want. But that's after hundreds, if not thousands of hours playing this app game, which the average person definitely does not have. So having it more appealing and more accessible, I think that would be pretty good. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it all goes that in-game economy balance, right? I mean, personally, I put in the hours. I loved that I could grind it and max it out, but it's just not sustainable. And so I think, there's certain elements from mainline that they wanted to bring over for sure. But that being said, in Kunitori, the Japanese Romance of the Three Kingdoms Yokai Watch game, there you can't necessarily do this either. When you max out a yokai from the gacha, you get a ticket back, and the tickets are, you need hundreds, kind of like feathers in Fire Emblem, I guess. You know that far better than I do. But you get a very small amount back, and so you're definitely going to have to crank a lot more if you want to limit break or raise the soultimate or drive skill levels of your characters, and that's certainly much better from the developer's standpoint in terms of generating revenue.
Yeah, agreed. One of the other things that can be improved was just overall transparency from the beginning. I've talked about this in previous bullet points that we were talking about. Showing the drop rates at the beginning that say, hey, you know what, these C rank yokai are going to be 5%. These B rank yokai are going to be like 3%. A ranks 2%. S ranks 1%. SS ranks 0.5%. Being transparent about that, being transparent with the tier prices, saying, hey, if you spend X amount of dollars, you will receive X amount rewards. I think that's a no-brainer. So changing that, easy. So pushing on with that, I would say that adding monthly incentives for paid purchases would definitely help out the longevity. Imagine this, all right? So you get the month of March. Here's your March bonus purchase. So not only if you spend $80 on Y money, we will give you X amount of soul secrets. We'll give you this yokai. Not necessarily saying, hey, heads up, now each yokai are going to be for sale, but a little something extra that you can only buy per account once per month. I think that would be amazing. So maybe for me, I missed out on the Select-A-Coin, right? I was chasing after Swell Terrier for who knows how many months. I could never crank him in order to get Komashura. I never got him. So if the month of April had a specific incentive to purchase. Hey, if you buy the $80 pack of Y money, you'll get this one Selectacoin, and you can pick and choose X of out of all these little yokai. So if Swell Terrier was one of them, boom, I would love that. And that would make me look forward to the next month of playing. Then I'll spend another $80. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be $80. It's just an example of a way of doing it. Or, you know, Ageless Powder. I was chasing after Ageless Powder for so long for that fusion. I couldn't get it. So that could be another incentive that says, hey, if you spend $25 this month, you'll get X amount of Y money, you'll get X soul secrets, and here, we'll even throw in this rare fusion item, so you don't have to worry about grinding and trying to get the drops. So, yeah, what do you think about that? I think that would be perfect.
Yeah, anything you can do to get, you know, the first step is getting them to download the game. The second step is getting everybody to play it. And from there, you want them to spend money, right, if you're the developer. And from there, it's coming back, spending more money, doing it all repeatedly. And in Puni Puni, they've kind of done this. It's not necessarily a here are your rewards for ongoing things, but instead, nowadays, every 2 to 3 months, they have what they call the Nyanbo. It's a special fourth gacha that appears, and it really, you know, I doubt they brought it just for you, but I think for players like you, it's for those special yokai that you really want, but maybe you missed out on for timing reasons usually. In Puni Puni, they have all kinds of forms of Enma that are triple S ranks, and you can't just get them any day, right? You had to be there for that moment. But what you can do during these Nyanbo events is you can spend some money, crank the Nyanbo gacha. It's limited to these exclusive yokai you might have missed out on, and it gives people an opportunity to catch up as well, which I think there's getting people to keep playing, keep paying, but there's also that catch-up aspect as well, which is what the Selectacoin you mentioned is all about, except with the Selectacoin, once you missed it, if they don't bring it back again, you're kind of out of luck, right? So those kinds of opportunities where people are more than willing to pay for Kirikoma, pay for, you know, Dark God Enma, whatever it may be. Those are really exciting to people, and it provides that shortcut that real money can provide when you get that gift from grandma of a Play Store credit, right?
There we
versus, hey, no matter how much effort I put into this, I can never get that yokai because they just don't exist in the game anymore, but they're really cool.
I love that idea, and I don't play Puni, but hearing that idea like lights my eyes up. I would, if they brought that back halfway through the life cycle of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, or if they brought that concept, I would be all over it, man. Anyway, let's move on. All right, so we're talking about spending money, right? Some people spend money to play the game. Of course, it helps with you getting some rewards. I would love it if they would somehow incentivize the tiers. So meaning that if you're on Silver 3 for spending $60 in the game, don't quote me on that, it's just an example. If you're in like that tier, what happens if you would get a boost in the amount of Y money that you earned? If that the Y money economy was still there. You like, let's say for example, you would get like a 2% boost. And if you make it to the gold tier, you can get like a 10% boost. If you make it to black tier, you get a 15% boost in Y money. So that would incentivize you wanting to pay money in order to invest in the long term of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble. You know, same concept of, let's say for example, if you don't spend any money on the game, you have the current gacha drop rates, right? Whatever the 3%, whatever the 2%, half a percent, fraction of a percent, whatever it is, that would be your regular base rate. Let's say, for example, you made it up to silver status, silver 1, 2, 3. What if that boosted your befriending rates or your drop rates by a half of a percent? And if you make it to gold, another half of a percent. If you make it to black, diamond, ruby, whatever the highest ranks are, and that would improve your ways of doing it. I think that would be so fundamentally awesome that it would totally reward people, and it would get people to bust out their Google Play cards, their App Store, iTunes cards, bust out the wallet to spend money on the game, because you get rewarded with not just something that's consumable one time, but something that will help invest into the future of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble if you're going to be playing it for the long run. What do you think about that?
I think, again, anything that you can do to try and make it sticky from a game perspective, from a paying perspective, it could be as simple as in-game titles attributed to you for keeping up with certain perks. It could be, like you said, giving bonuses that get you there. The real kind of thought behind buying Y money is you're getting the Y money for buying it, right? But if you don't have this consistency in what you're going to get, this transparency, if you could spend $1,000 and not get the yokai you want from there, but you do get this one exclusive Gemignon that's nice to show off, but doesn't actually do a whole lot, I can see, the value's not there. And that's where it goes back a little bit to, this is a level 5 reward versus a game reward. But that being said, it seems like then that part of the reward system is just absent. And so I'm sure they would take somebody consistently investing in the game over somebody doing some one-off just to get a single exclusive. So that definitely could have helped the economy.
Yeah, and then the purchase tiers, like you're talking about, you're investing into that level 5 ID account, which is fine. Anyone can do that, especially if you guys are playing Professor Layton. You can access in-app purchases, and you can start working on your American or English level 5 account with that. I felt that the purchase tiers were way expensive. $4,500, $4,500 to max out all the tiers. That's a little much for me. So, I don't know. Maybe some people can argue, oh yeah, if it's for the life of the app, then okay, that's fine. But just for the average person, 4,000. If you're gonna put that on paper, dude, that's a lot of money. So,
yeah, realistically, it's a lot of money for everybody, no matter what walk of life you're from. I think you can justify some of the lower tiers if you're saying, hey, level 5 has a bunch of games. This is me investing across all those games and sharing the perks. But in the U.S. market, you really had Wibble Wobble, and so it just didn't make nearly as much sense.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then last but not least, on our list of things to improve Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, and of course Yokai Watch in general, is just overall communication with fans and the consumers, the end users, other than saying, hey, heads up, we got maintenance scheduled, or hey, look at this new event that's going to be coming soon. A lot more communication. Upload gameplay trailers to the Yokai Watch official YouTube channel. Get people excited about these new things. It's really not the Yokai Watch official channel on YouTube doesn't really do much anymore. It's an avenue of marketing that's just not there. I would have loved to have seen a lot more, a turn on notifications. Hey, heads up, here's a new Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble trailer for the next release Yokai or the next event that's happening. A lot more push on that. Just communicating with us. Like, we want to know what's happening. Okay, yeah, sure, it's hush-hush that you guys are working on Blasters and Yokai Watch 3 for the time. But, other than sneaking in, Usapion's little ears into, like, a Twitter image or something like that, we want a little bit more communication throughout the fan base. Because as of right now, I feel that the Yokai Watch fan base is just a little quiet. We don't know what to expect. There's rumors speculating all over the place about whether or not we're going to get Yokai Watch 3, or whether or not we're getting Blasters or Busters. Yokai Watch 4 is coming out in Japan on Nintendo Switch. Like, what are we even getting here? We're completely in the dark. So I would say that communication would definitely be key to the success of an app. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Level 5 is a media company. They don't just make smartphone games. They don't just make 3DS games. They make movies, TV shows, and recently when I was in Japan, I was watching Inazuma 11, the anime, on Tokyo broadcast system, and during that they had a commercial for Snack World toys. They had a commercial for the latest Puni event. So they're all tied together in a really interesting way. There's a lot of communication there, and there's a lot of support from creator communications, like we have here, YouTube, Twitter, etc. And I do think that the official Yokai Watch YouTube channel is definitely underused, even for mainline or other things. And I know that some of that, unfortunately, I think was lack of communication probably between NHN, Level 5 Abby, the US presence. But it's either way, it's a hugely missed opportunity to connect with the fans that just wanted to know more.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, moving on, that's a great segue, actually. You're talking about the Snack World, and I love that game, by the way. That's one of my favorite level 5 IPs. So good. Can't wait for that to get localized. But we're going to talk about what did Yokai Watch Puni Puni, the Japanese game, aside from, all this content that they're constantly putting out together, like, what else are they doing that's so successful? Robbett, let's talk about it. You're talking about Y points, collaboration events. I mean, what are they doing that's so successful?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we talked about content. There's a lot more they can pull from. We've had a bunch of Treasure Busters events. We've had Shadow Side events, sort of the reboot of Yokai Watch 40 years in the future, with a little bit more adult, darker tone. We had a Snack World collaboration recently. Yokai Watch is present in manga form in Japan, and so there are collaborations even with Koro Koro magazine, for example, that has Yokai Watch manga, but also has other properties. So I don't know how many fans there are out there of Inuyasha, which you can catch on Netflix, but we have Inuyasha in Yokai Watch Puni Puni, in 2 forms, actually. So it's all over the place in terms of what they bring in. They've had Sanrio events, so you can have a Hello Kitty SS with a Soultimate that just kicks butt. And so they've just done a tremendous amount there, both sharing inward toward the game and sharing out from it, and they create a lot uniquely for Puni Puni. And so we've got the notion of extreme yokai in Puni Puni. There's this whole backstory about these sort of rogue yokai that are trying to take over both the yokai world away from Enma and also some of the human world. And so you've got these amazing, extreme Noko, extreme Snartle, extreme Venoct, that have these tremendous capabilities, and it's all part of continuing to ramp up the abilities in the game, keeping players engaged. Those are all characters that you can get in those Nyanbo coins that come back around every once in a while and beg you to spend your hard-earned money. So they funnel a tremendous amount of attention into the game, and they pull from all over the level 5 universe and other Japanese areas as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It sounds amazing. But I mean, keep in mind that they have access to the entire Yokai Watch franchise. They have all the releases already at their disposal. So, I can totally see where, the United States market or the market outside of Japan would have a little bit of a harder time doing that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't figure out some sort of other collaboration that ties into it. And they didn't necessarily just have to grab seconds from Puni Puni and then think that they had to do that. So thinking outside the box would have been really good. So, all right. So Absolutely. That leaves us to our last couple talking points. Again, thank you guys so much for listening up and watching and having a good time. Always curious about what you guys think about Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble and the Shutdown. Let us know in the comments. But our last one is, what's the future? What does the future hold for Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble? May 31st marks the end of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble for now, but does that necessarily mean that it's completely done? Now, there is some sort of press release floating around that says that there is possibly an October 2018 mobile title that they're going to be working on. Could Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble make a comeback in a new shape and form? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, both you and I are level 5 ambassadors, influencers, whatever you want to call it, and talking about the communication, even we don't know, right? And I'm not sure that level 5 does. I think level 5 is deeply invested in bringing Yokai Watch and their other assets to the United States, and I'm sure they'd love to have a great mobile presence. They definitely have precedent for using multiple developers, so I'm sure this specific Wibble Wobble that you and I know and loved is probably co-owned with NHN the developer, but They have mobile games in Japan with other developers, so I think there's definitely a possibility. I think if it were to come back, it'd probably be slightly different. Maybe it wouldn't be called Wibble Wobble, but I, for one, would love to see another Yokai Watch game on the smartphone.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they even talked about a long time ago that they were going to port Yokai Watch 1, the 3DS game, to mobile. Which is, I don't know, it feels a little obsolete at the time right now, but unless they do some crazy drastic changes, such as trading and maybe some tweaks to items, I think that'd be really fun. They also talked about, what is that, Fantasy Life mobile games. There's a lot of franchises with level 5, so I feel that, it's not the end. I would say. I think it's just kind of the beginning of things, as kind of backwards as that sounds. But Abdallah, I can't play Wibble Wobble anymore. What do you mean it's just the beginning? No, I have a feeling that level 5 is going to be working really hard to make sure that we're taken care of. So I've got full faith in them as a company. I know you do too, Robbett, and I know that a lot of you guys out there do. So although you guys may be saddened at the loss of all your data and all your hard work put into Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble, I would say that just stay tuned. There's some really cool things on the horizon. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for our discussion. Almost an hour of talking about Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble. Did you guys enjoy it? Let us know in the comments. I cannot wait to read all of your comments. Tell us. Now's your time. Tell us about your favorite moments of Yokai Watch Wibble Wobble. Things that you really enjoyed about it. Things that you may have not liked so much. Did you agree with all of our talking points? Did you disagree? Let us know why. Let's comment about it in the comment section below. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it. Robbett, thank you so much. Why don't you tell everyone right now where they can find you, where they can subscribe and turn on notifications, all that stuff. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Abdallah. I know everyone listening to this is a big Yokai Watch fan and probably played and enjoyed the Wibble Wobble game, so it's great getting to talk about it, what was good, what could have been better, and there's definitely hope for the future. For those of you that are interested in seeing the Japanese version, Puni Puni, I upload a video for every new event out there, and you can find it on the Springdale Data Sciences YouTube channel, or just search for Robbett Watch.
There we go. As simple as that. So make sure that you guys all subscribe, turn on your notifications to both of us. I'm going to be playing through a lot of the brand new Yokai Watch games, like the upcoming Blasters and the upcoming Yokai Watch 3, and definitely the Japanese version of Yokai Watch 4. So there's still going to be a huge Yokai Watch presence on my channel. I want you to check it out. But that's going to be it for our video. Thank you again for watching. Go check out Robbett, and don't forget to smash that like button to pay respects to Wibble Wobble, and we will see you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching.